Hello, folks, and welcome to the future. I'm Mark Stay. Welcome to Mark Stay's Creative Differences, a monthly live stream where I talk to writer friends about those little things that make a big difference to their craft and careers, in the hope that we can give readers some insight to the creative process and writers and other creative folks some practical advice they can actually use. I'm Mark Stay, author, screenwriter, and podcaster. And if you're joining us live, feel free to ask questions in the comments and take part in the conversation. A big thank you, as always, to Dom Currie for his jingle. And I'm using air quotes with that. If you're listening to this on the podcast, get yourself to YouTube so you can see this jingle that he's done, because it's basically the opening of Blade Runner. I'm going to show it again. 3, 2, 1. Let's meet our special guest, shall we? Gareth L Powell. He's an award-winning author of British science fiction and horror. He's written over 20 published books and has twice, count them, won the British Science Fiction Association Award for Best Novel. His new novel, Future's Edge, which is out today, folks, is garnering the most amazing reviews and is set to be another modern classic of science fiction. He's also managing editor of Stars and Sabers Publishing, which has a brilliant anthology which is out now. It's only Gareth L Powell. Gareth, welcome to the Creative Differences podcast and happy publication day. We're recording this on the publication of Future's Edge. How are you today, sir?
Thank you. I'm blown away by that jingle.
You and I are big Blade Runner fans. I know we love the Vangelis soundtrack, love the film.
I recently went to see a screening of the film with a live band.
Oh, wow.
That was incredible. I was sat in the front row at the Bristol Beacon, and they had the live band, and it comes up, and I had forgotten it starts with 2 massive drum beats. It's I leapt out my skin. It was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's publication day. We're recording this on the publication of Future's Edge, your new novel. How do you mark publication day after 20-something books? Is it just another day? Is it a special day? Do you have cake? Do you have champagne? What do you do?
Oh, I should have got some cake and champagne. No, well, I mean, I had to go to work this morning, so I had some social media posts set up and ready to go. So I got up this morning and fired those all off, and then went off to work and obsessively monitored my social media feeds to see.
Well, let's talk about Future's Edge, in which you wipe out planet Earth. Now, that's not a spoiler. That's in the blurb. Yeah, that was quite early on. Any message there for us, perhaps? Have you had enough?
Well, I mean, wiping out the Earth, I thought I'd get in there early to beat the rush. It's set after the Earth has been destroyed. Humans and other aliens from other civilizations are being herded along the spiral arm of our galaxy towards the end by these undefeatable violent creatures that are slowly moving outwards from the center of the galaxy and destroying everything in their path. We join the protagonist, Ursula Morrow, in a refugee camp while she's waiting for her sort of boyfriend who stayed behind to fight to give people of Earth time to evacuate. And she's been waiting 2 years for him to come along, and then he does, but things aren't quite as she thought they were.
And this is a standalone. This isn't tied to any other series. This is a completely fresh story. Was that a bigger challenge coming off the back of the series that you've been working on? Because the world building is kind of just as difficult for one book as it is for 3, 4, 5 in a series. What were the big challenges there?
It wasn't such a huge challenge because the last series I did was a 2-book series, but both those books were standalones within the same universe, if you see what I mean. So that was Stars and Bones and Descendant Machine, and they were quite different in tone. One was kind of more sci-fi horror, the other was more kind of quest narrative. And oh yes, there they are. But before that, I did the Embers of War trilogy with Fleet of Knives, Light with Possible Stars, and before that, I'd written a sort of 4-book series about a talking monkey, and it's kind of, having done the 2 big series, it's kind of freeing to do standalone. So this is kind of like 3 standalones now, and it just gives me time to play with different ideas and play with different characters. And while there was something really comforting with the Embers of War trilogy, like when I got to the 3rd book, I knew the characters so well, I knew the scene, that I could just slide straight into it. It was, at the same time, I was getting a bit restless, and it's like, well, we've done 3 books now, I want to try lots of other things. So that's basically what I've been doing, is lots and lots of other things behind the scene, and this is the first to come out.
What's coming first for you? Is there an element of world building, a bit of character? Is it a bit of both at the same time? How do the two kind of mesh and become a story?
Usually there'll just be an idea, and then I will kind of come up with a character, a vague idea of a plot, and then I'll just kind of, and then bits will kind of pull in. It's like gas coming into a crete to form a star, and then it reaches critical mass and explodes, and that's kind of, and then I start writing.
Very good analogy from a science fiction author. Now, you're writing science fiction in a period where science reality is starting to look a lot like the science fiction of our youth. And, we were talking before we were on air, because I got the reissue of this book, which is the Usborne Book of the Future, which I'm looking at, and it's, it only goes up to the year, but it's from the 70s, but it went up to like the year 2000. And it's, so much of what it's talking about in here has kind of already happened, or or is in the process of happening as well. So, when you're writing science fiction ideas about our future, about the way that things are changing, technology is affecting our lives, are you having to, think beyond what most of us can kind of keep up with? Because when you start talking about, I understood jetpacks and rockets and spaceships and light speed and stuff like that, but when we get into quantum stuff, when we get into, time dilation and stuff like that, it can get a little bit much for my little brain. So how aware are you of what the reader's going to comprehend and understand, and how far they're going to go with you?
I try and explain everything simply, usually because maybe I don't understand it either. But my characters tend to be kind of not scientists. They tend to be working grunts. They tend to be, people just doing a job, caught up in stuff beyond their pay grade. And so they tend to sort of view it in a way that hopefully the reader can relate to. They're looking at it as sort of everyday people, not as quantum scientists. So, and also I try and set my stories a healthy amount of time in the future as well. So science isn't going to catch up with the stories just yet.
You do keep abreast of this stuff. This is part of your, kind of part of your remit, isn't it? You have to get your head around this stuff. Is there anything that you're thinking, you're looking back at books you've written earlier in your career and you think, I wish I'd known that. I wish I could go back and put that in, or because it is advancing, our knowledge of these things is advancing at quite a pace. But is there anything you wish you could go back and change?
Not science-wise. There's maybe, although there is a short story where one of the characters mentions MySpace. Usually when I look back and want to change something, it's something to do with dialogue or character interaction or a clunky metaphor. So,
and as someone who regularly peers into the future, what should we be most worried about? Obviously, today is as well as the last day of the government consultation on AI, which every author I know is deeply concerned about. But is there anything else in the future we should be worried about?
I think I can talk about it now because it was mentioned in The Guardian, but I was involved in the consultation.
Yes, you were, weren't you? Yes.
The Defence Department and the did with Coventry University and a bunch of science fiction writers to predict 50 years in the future and 100 years in the future what are going to be the major threats to the UK and Europe. And the answer to your question is all sorts of things.
Because that was that Alan Stroud who organised that?
Yes,
I think. Yeah.
It was hugely interesting. Yeah.
I'm going to flip that question around though. What should we be optimistic about? What are the things are there bright bits of the future ahead of us as well?
There are bright bits of the future. Medicine is getting better slowly. It's hugely underfunded, but the technology is coming slowly. There's all sorts of kind of genetic technology, and I think we will see a few more major diseases wiped out in the near future. And there are both left-wing and right-wing think tanks are now pushing the idea of universal basic income.
Yes.
Something the right-wing has always been against, but now they're thinking, actually, that's cheaper to run than Social Security, and you don't have to means test, you don't have to. So, and with AI coming on board, we're going to lose a lot of traditional jobs. So, I think if we had that university implemented, and we looked at a lot of studies of where it has been used in various countries, and the studies all tend to see that it's hugely beneficial because it gives people the chance to start businesses, to make art, to and really do what they want to do, and it hugely invigorates the economy. So I'm hoping that comes on stream within the next however many years, and we will see, instead of just AI taking everybody's jobs, it will be AI freeing everybody to start their own business and stuff like that. So if you want to look at it optimistically, then those are some.
And my daughter will tell you, I bang on about universal basic income all the time, don't I? Yeah, as a struggling writer, it's something I'm very, very pro. But I think we saw during lockdown, when people had the freedom to do what they wanted, they were baking, they were making music, they were writing, they were doing the things that they loved. And I think, if we can free people up to do that, the world can only be a better place, rather than living to work. So I like to be optimistic about these kind of things. Now, you're not only an award-winning author, Gareth. You are now a publisher as part of Stars and Sabers, and you've got this incredible anthology out here, which is now available. This is the first of a number that are coming along. Tell us about Stars and Sabers and how it all came about.
Well, I mean, this beautiful.
Oh, look at that!
Absolutely gorgeous. But it's it came about. My wife, Jendia Gammon, has always wanted to be into publishing, and we set up the imprint. And she did an awful lot of admin work and stuff behind the scenes to register the company and to do it all properly, and set it up and set up the website. And we put out a call to some authors, and the authors we got for this are incredible. There are Hugo winners, Bram Stoker Award winners, there's a BAFTA winner. It's just an absolute cavalcade of talent. I won't read them all out because there's 29 authors there, but they are some of the best and most exciting authors working in all genres at the moment. There's history. There's not history. There's sci-fi, fantasy, and horror in there, and we gave them sort of carte blanche. We said, write whatever you like in whatever genre, and so it's a very varied anthology. And Jendia said it's like a chocolate box. You open it, and it's every story is a little wrapped up gift because they're so amazing. And in fact, we were so blown away by the anthology, we actually got kind of FOMO that we hadn't put one of our own stories in there. So.
Having become a publisher, do you have more empathy for your own publishers? Because I was at an event the other day, and it was an author I'd never met before. We were in the green room before going out to do a talk, and you put two authors in a room for more than 10 minutes, and we will start moaning about publishers. So it's just something that we do. No offense to publishers, we just have a common enemy. Having become a publisher, do you now have a bit more empathy for publishing and the whole mechanic of how it's done about, and having to wrangle authors and get them to deliver on time and all that kind of thing?
I guess. I mean, I must say our authors so far have been extremely well behaved. But one of our aims when setting out to found this press, as well as championing human creativity, so there's no AI art, there's no AI editing, there's no AI stories. One of our other aims was to be a publisher that writers like working with. treat the writers with respect, pay them quickly, provide amazing covers for them, and just generally provide a hugely good experience for readers and writers. And that was as writers, that was very important to us. So.
There are more anthologies on the way. I saw these on your Facebook page the other day. So there's a magic anthology, a romantasy anthology, a horror anthology, a Weird West anthology, which sounds fantastic. Is the next one up and running yet? Are you sort of looking for authors? And I'm sure there are going to be authors looking at this thinking, I'd love to be part of that, but is it invitation only, or can they apply? How does that all work?
At this stage, there's only 4 members of staff on the press, and we're all working writers as well. So we won't be running an open submission period just yet, because we couldn't cope. Frankly, we'd be completely overwhelmed with having to read it all. So at the moment, we have had a few stories in for the next anthology from various writers, and some we've invited, and some are writers from the first anthology who had such a great time they want to come back, which is obviously very pleasing. But we're also sticking out some novellas, forthcoming single author novellas, and we've got a sort of slate of those for the next 2 years as well. So, I mean, if you check out the Stars and Sabers website, there's a whole list of what's coming up and which authors, and it's turning into quite an exciting sort of slate of books. So.
Now, you mentioned earlier you were at work today. You're working in a bookshop. I mean, I worked in books many, many years ago as a bookseller. It's great there being at the sharp end of things. What are you learning from readers and engaging with the customers? Has it sort of made you think about what you might write next as well, how you might change things? What are readers wanting out there?
Well, it's a bookshop in a fairly small provincial town. So there's a large retired demographic and a sort of young professionals. It's a dormitory town, so there's kind of young professional families. So it's an interesting kind of mix. Obviously, children's books sell by the bucket load, which is hugely heartening when we hear that kids don't read anymore. They do. They love them. They come in, they absolutely adore them. Especially things like Dogman and Bunny versus Monkey, which are just hugely popular. The kind of romantasy thing is quite popular as well, and but also sort of mainstream literature, the big sellers. Some of which I've been introduced to that I wouldn't necessarily have picked up had I not been working in the shop and seeing them every day. But one of the things I did when I started working there is made a habit to, as I tidy up the shelves, I read the back of every book. So I've got an idea of what every book is about. So when people say, "Have you got a book about X, Y, or Z?" I can point them in the right direction. But I think I'm writing. I'm a publisher. I'm working a bookshop. I think all I need to do now is drive the van, and I've got the entire industry sorted.
Yes, you've not bought a warehouse yet, have you? It's you're not getting into distribution. No, okay. People watching this or listening to this might be surprised. Hang on, he's won the BSFA award twice. He's got 20 books out there. What's he doing working in a bookshop? And I just, folks, if you watched last month's episode with Nicola, where she made a joke, and this is not a diss on Nicola, she just made a joke about, I'm not stacking the shelves in Tesco's yet. You may have seen a slightly strange reaction from me. I looked at you, didn't I, Emily? Because over Christmas, I was driving a Tesco van because I needed the money. I realised around about October, I didn't have any money coming in. I had a tax bill coming, and I figured I needed some money. And so the Society of Authors did a survey a couple of years ago and discovered the average earnings of an author in the UK is about $7,000. And that's down from about 10 grand about 3 or 4 years before that. The authors you see on the shelves in your local indie bookshop and your Waterstones, even in the Amazon bestseller charts, most of us are struggling, aren't we, Gareth? I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, we've got to pay the rent. And, the cost of living has been going up and up and up, and the payment for writing has remained pretty much static since the 70s, it feels like. So,
yeah.
The days when Philip K. Dick could pay 6 months' rent with a short story, way in the past. So,
Yeah, I mean, when I started out, I remember you talk to authors and they'd say, well, you need to get about 5 books published, and then the royalties start coming in. You can kind of pay the rent with that. It's not the case anymore, is it? It's it's nigh on impossible, and it's the only profession as well where if you start out, if you're a debut and everyone's very excited, you get a massive advance, but as your career goes on, the advances tend to get smaller as you go along. It's the only career where the more you do it, the less they end up paying you. So it's interesting. I mean, there was a thing in the booksellers today talking about how a lot of mid-list authors are seriously looking at self-publishing, even though there's an outlay to begin with. The money you earn so much more from each sale that I know, or indeed setting up your own publisher as well, to take control of what you can put out and how you put it out and how the money gets driven to you. So it's it's very, very interesting times. Are you finding that, speaking to your peers, that there's a bit of a sea change out there, or most of them want to stick with traditional?
I don't know. It's kind of a mix. There's, there's some small presses publishing incredibly exciting work that isn't coming through traditional publishers. But yeah, there just seems to be at all levels. I mean, I speak to some authors who are self-publishing, and they are just as uncertain about what's going on as published authors. And with Amazon, keep changing things to do with their KDP, and some authors who went all in on publishing on Amazon and now finding, have I made the right decision? I mean, it's the biggest platform, but how much of my work do I actually own? They could take it all away tomorrow. So it's a very uncertain time out there, I think.
Well, look, let's get on to our regular questions. We ask these of each of our guest authors each month. Let's start with, what small thing has made a big difference to your creative process?
Tea.
Do you have a particular brand? Because I've seen your pictures on social media. You've got that wonderful little cast iron kettle, haven't you?
It was my my lockdown coping mechanism was I got really into tea, and I started like loose leaf teas and different types of teas, and so now it's like it's no tea bags, it's proper sort of bags of loose leaf tea.
Nice.
And I've made an app for my phone which I just, with a picture of a teapot on it, and I press it and it automatically times 5 minutes, which is just right for the tea to steam.
Properly brewed, fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite brand of tea? What should we be looking out for?
I'm kind of in between favorite brands at the moment. I was very fond of Whittard's English breakfast loose leaf for a while.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking around for a slightly less expensive version, but I've tried lots of different ones. So at the moment, I'm on the Sainsbury's Red Label, which is quite good.
You got me some Yorkshire Gold for Christmas, didn't you, Emily? That is first class stuff. That is really good. What's the thing that makes you think you're ready to start writing on a project?
As I was saying earlier, it's the sort of things gradually increase and sort of clump together, and it's kind of, there isn't a single kind of, oh, let's go. But I kind of write my way into it. So I'll start, I'll write a first line, I'll write a paragraph, think, okay. And then I'll go back and I'll rewrite the outline. The outline's usually about a page, just a very brief kind of high-level overview of the plot, and I'll rewrite that about 10 times till I've finished with it, and then I'll start writing a first chapter, and maybe that won't be going anywhere, so I'll start again, or I'll realise I've picked the wrong character, and I just kind of write my way into the book, so that by the time I'm about 5,000 words in, starting to pick up steam, and I think, right, I know where we're going now, so I might chop out all that original stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like easing yourself into a hot bath. It's just...
Ellen, this is the most British conversation ever. Tea and a hot bath. Yes, brilliant. How do you know when you're done? How do you know when you've finished a draft?
I type the end.
Mm-hmm.
I do the thing that they say you shouldn't do, which is I edit as I go along. but that just works for me because if I'm on page 400 and I think, oh, it would be much better if this guy had green eyes, I will go back and change it there and then while I think of it.
Right.
When I sit down to do a day's writing, I will go back to the previous chapter I wrote yesterday and read through that and edit it so that when I get to the end of that, I can ready to keep going. So yeah, I mean, it's a gut feel as well. When you think,
Yeah,
I've made this as good as I can make it, I now need an editor to look at it. It's like pushing a rock up a hill for me, and then push it up the first 40,000 words, and it comes tumbling down. So the last 20,000 words are usually written in a feverish kind of over the last. So I have to kind of make sure I haven't rushed the ending because I'm so close. I just want to finish this damn thing. So
that's kind of where I am at the moment on my current project. If I squint, I can almost see the finish line, and the temptation is just to burn through it. But that's usually where I'll make the biggest mistakes. How do you remember the idea that you have at, say, 3 a.m?
I always have my phone next to the bed, and I can say, "Hey Siri, take a note." Just dictate it into the phone, and then.
What do you want it to say?
I was waiting for that.
Okay, I've created your note. It's called bra.
Oh, that's priceless. Thanks for that, Gareth.
I thought my phone is off. I'll be safe saying this, and I forgot it's on the damn computer as well. I will go through that process that I just demonstrated, and then in the morning, because it's synced up with my desktop, I just open my notes file and the notes are there waiting for me. So
note from Usman there: 22, 33, 32. Siri gain sentience. It's the end times, people. Oh, fantastic. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your writing career?
Oh, Lord. The worst thing, I don't know if it's a mistake, it could have been, or it could have just been an act of God, but was when the first half of the first draft of Descendant Machine vanished.
Oh, God, I remember this, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'd been working on it for 3 months, I think, and then one day it just wasn't on my computer. It wasn't in the recycle bin. It wasn't, anywhere. I used various kind of programs to claw through the hard drive to try and find it, and nothing. It just completely vanished. So unless I just did something ridiculously stupid in my sleep, or I don't know what, I've no idea what happened to it, but this entire 3 months work just absolutely vanished. That was a big setback because, that was when you go, that feeling where you just go cold.
Yeah.
And then, in sort of Agatha Christie films from the 70s when there's like a pistol blast or a scream and then you get a shot of a load of crows flapping up from a tree. It was kind of like that. I just uttered a curse so venomous it turned the air to glass. And and I lay on the sofa and thought, I'm never going to write again. It's all over.
And I remember talking to you about this at the time, and it was just one of those complete mysteries. It wasn't like you weren't backing stuff up. It just absolutely vanished. Is it, because this happened to a friend of mine the other day, and I said to him, oh, this happens to all sorts of writers, but every one of them tells me that when they go back and rewrite it, it's so much better. Would you say that's true, or am I just trying to make my friend feel good?
No, that's true. The book I wrote was substantially different from the first draft I had done, and much better for it. So it was a blessing in a very, very heavy disguise.
What's the best happy accident of your writing career?
My writing career? It's all a happy accident, I think. It's luck has played such a huge part in everything. Being in the right place at the right time. My first novel, Silver Sands, was published because I had a story in Interzone, my first story in Interzone. And I think I mentioned somewhere that I'd gone to the University of Glamorgan. And I had an email from the guy who was running Pendragon Press. And he just said, oh, hi, Gareth, I see you went to University of Glamorgan, so did I. I run a small press. You got any books you want published? And here's my first novel. So it was just, it was just things like that, being in the right place at the right time. We like to think so much of it is down to our sort of raw talent, but a lot of it is just, putting the right manuscript on the right desk at the right time.
Is there a character or a story swirling around in your mind that you want to write, but you're not quite ready to write it yet?
Oh, there are hundreds. A lot of times when I'm thinking about a book, I've kind of got a vibe of what the book will be. So it's like a feeling more than any details. And I've got this feeling that I've had for about 2 years for this kind of mainstream, deeply literary novel, but I've got absolutely no idea how to write it. And I probably can't write it. I think it's way out of my depth, but it's just kind of there at the back of my mind. I've got a title and just kind of not much else, just kind of vibes about what it would be like. So, yeah.
Emily, do we have any questions from the folks who are with us this evening? Okay, can we pop them up on the screen, please? Usman Smith, which of your books delivered the most joy rather than sales to you? That's a great question, Usman. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
That's a great question. I wrote a novella called Ragged Alice that was published by Tor. Oh, yes, there they are. I wrote that midway through writing the Embers of War space opera trilogy, and it's about a murder in a small Welsh coastal town. And so it was completely, utterly different to the widescreen space opera that I was writing at the time. And I really enjoyed that because, my father's family's from Wales. I spent a lot of time in Wales. And it just gave me the opportunity to kind of write in a completely different way. It was fun, and I kind of invented this little town and the inhabitants and just wrote this kind of spooky murder mystery.
I think I saw you read from that at an EasterCon and being blown away by it. So it is fantastic. So do check it out, folks. Ragged Alice, there we go. It's up there on the sort of top right of the image there. So do check that out. Do you sometimes want to revisit a published book to expand a character's journey or tidy a plot twist in light of current world affairs?
I've long had an idea for a fourth Embers of War book. Commercially, the interest isn't there if the books, because with trilogies, what tends to happen is the sales fall off over the series. So the first book sells the most, and then the second book sells slightly less, and then the third book sells slightly less. And by the time the third book is coming out, you're going, yay, and people go, oh, I've got to buy 2 more books before I can read that one. So it's kind of a bit harder. So, when you say to the publisher, how about a fourth book? They go, how about something new? So, that's why we've moved on to standalones, because it's much easier to invite an audience in and they don't have to worry about this back catalogue that they have to catch up on first.
Well, look, Gavin's up for one. There we go. Gavin, fourth Embers of War. Yes, here we go. Embers of War, was that that was in development as a TV show as well, wasn't it?
It was in development for about 4 years as a TV show. There was a partially animated trailer they produced for the pitch. It looked fantastic, and the script was just, it was just like, I was like, oh God, this is better than the book. It taught me a lot about show don't tell, because stuff I had just kind of mentioned in passing in the book, they had to create a scene to show on the TV, because they couldn't just do that. So I was saying, wow, there's all these great scenes I could have written. But it was fantastic. Unfortunately, it kind of lost momentum around about the writer's strike, and eventually they didn't renew the option. So yeah, maybe one day.
Question from Gavin here. Does rereading yesterday's chapter and editing as you go slow down the drafting too? Or are the time savings on future drafts worth the effort on earlier drafts? That's a great question there, Gavin. So you're spending that time to sort of reread, build that momentum up. Does that mean when you sort of break through the wall of yesterday's work and you're writing fresh words today, you're moving faster and with more clarity than you would otherwise?
I think so, yeah, definitely. And I also try never to end a day's work at the end of a chapter, because if you end at the end of a chapter, then the next day you wake up to a blank white page again, and you have to get started, and it's it's enough white space to make Ranulph Fiennes nervous, and it's so it's going back and sort of editing the previous chapter gives you like a run up. And it definitely does save time doing future drafts, because you've already picked up a lot of, a lot of problems, a lot of typos, and stuff you will still have to go back and change. But you've done some of it. So,
Is it possible to write a story and have it work in many possible settings? Can the same story be written as a space opera or a cozy coastal novel? That's a great question. Thanks, Laura.
I think it can. I mean, this is why space opera is called space opera. Back in the early days of TV, you had soap operas.
Yes.
Which were so called because the soap companies sponsored them.
Sponsored them, yeah.
And then westerns became known as horse operas. And so a lot of sci-fi was basically westerns with the serial numbers filed off and some spaceships instead of horses. So it became known pejoratively as space opera. You can, and I mean Firefly.
Yes.
You could, some of those stories, like the train robbery story and episode and stuff, you could easily have done that as a Western, straight Western without the spaceships. So, yeah, I mean, some stories are universal, independent of genre. And you see that with the various different interpretations of the classic fairy stories and stuff like Cinderella and all the different reinterpretations of the Greek myths as well in all sorts of genres. So, yeah, I think you definitely can do that. One of the things I try to do in science fiction is to have a plot that couldn't work anywhere else, because then I can defend science fiction. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Star Trek is a workplace series in space. They could be working in an office, they could be on a ship, they could be wherever. It's about primarily those three guys, but also the colleagues around them and them having to get on within an enclosed space. So it's a lot of that stuff can be transposed. About Writing is a fantastic book that has helped me a lot. What books other than your own would you recommend to help authors improve? And again, we'll flash that up. It's the lovely blue one in the middle there, About Writing. So what are the books that have inspired you, Gareth?
It's called Show Your Work. It's by the same guy who wrote Steal Like an Artist.
Austin Kleon, is that right?
That's the one, yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I should have remembered. That is the Emperor in Foundation. Obviously, I've reread Stephen King's On Writing about 1 million times. I'm working my way through his Dance Macabre at the moment, which is his examination.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Horror.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah.
I'm just looking at my shelf of writing.
Well, this is
books.
it. I've got a shelf over here as well, which is all my writing books together. So it's something I plunder on a regular basis.
The Organised Writer by Anthony Johnson is really useful.
Yeah, I spoke to him. I did him on the Bestseller Experiment podcast. I think we spoke to him about that. It was a really good book. All lots of little methods and ways to do things and keeping on top of stuff. It's very, very good. Usman, writing 9 to 5 days a week or when the muse moves you? Good question. So yeah, is it your, are you treating it as a turning up every day, or are you writing when you feel like it?
Half and half. It's, I treat it seriously as a job. But realistically, obviously I work in the bookshop to help pay the rent as well. So I can't, and there's some days you come home from work and you're just too damn tired. And so it's not every day, but every day I'm thinking about it. And every day I will, at least open a manuscript or a note and add something. And but yeah, there are days when nothing gets done because real life gets in the way. And
yes.
I'm a grandfather. I work in a bookshop. I'm a publisher. It's you can't do everything all at once. But as long as I can kind of get the book written in about 6 months, that's usually my period. Yeah.
You've published short story collections in the past. Do you see yourself releasing another anytime soon?
I do. Titan Books in September is going to be releasing a big 100 and something thousand word short story collection called Who Will You Save? My previous 2 short story collections, which I think are both out of print now, one's nearly 20 years old and one's nearly 10 years old. So and they were small press, so I think they only had. I don't think you can see either of them on there. Oh yeah, just see the last reef peeking through at the back there. But they, so yeah, and they had quite small print runs, so only about 600 people have read either of those, and so we're collecting together all the best loved stuff from the past and some new stuff. There are some short stories set in the Embers of War universe, and some stuff with Trouble Dog and her siblings before the first book. I'm fond and proud of all those, and as I say, it's a great big whacking thick collection of fiction. But yeah, September from Titan Books.
How do you think the space opera genre has adapted for this modern era of technology and world affairs?
It's gone in all sorts of directions. You've got sort of very weird stuff, and then you've got quite like old school stuff, like John Scalzi's Old Man's War series. It seems very kind of old school space opera, and then you've got the kind of stuff like Adrian Tchaikovsky, Children of Time, about the planet of the spiders, and which is very kind of scientific and speculative. Then you just have, then there are other stories that are just plain weird and or sort of reality bending and I think as well, which is very, very good, is there's so many more diverse voices in space opera now. It used to be a bit of a boys' club, but there's so much more so many more different viewpoints, so many more different kind of cultural storytelling traditions involved. That so some of my favourites are Aliette de Bodard's stories, the Zion Universe, which is sort of where it's a Vietnamese space opera, basically, in society. And that whole different culture is as kind of, it's as interesting as the made-up culture of a space opera, and it gets away from the old kind of space opera. You have an empire. It's like, why would we go back to empires, really, if we've got, an empire? Yes. Space doesn't make any sense. The distances are too big. So it's kind of, it gets away from that kind of, the old pattern and introduces new and more interesting twists, I think.
What's giving you joy this month?
Well, at the moment, I'm reading piles of books on this desk at all times. I'm reading this book, which is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. I'm not sure where it's going, really, or what it's doing, but it's just so beautifully written. It's just relaxing to read. And it's about 4 characters at different periods in history, and they're linked by this drop of water. So it's like a raindrop that falls on the head of a Sumerian ruler. And then it's a tear that comes out of another character in Victorian times, and so on. So it's got that kind of link, but also they're all somehow connected to the Epic of Gilgamesh. So you have this Sumerian ruler who's trying to get all the different versions together to create the definitive text. But it's just beautifully written, and it's got some interesting kind of little throwaway lines that make you think, oh, that's really good. That's a really good observation. That's a really good motto for life. Yeah. And
is that one of the books that you said earlier that you might not have come across it had you not worked in a bookshop? Is that an example of one of those?
Yeah, that's one I kept looking at on the shelf and reading bits and damn it, I'm going to have to read it. So, yeah.
What else is giving you joy this month, Gareth?
My granddaughter. So she was born in December, so she's still very small, but very wriggly, very smiley, and very giggly. And it was, always lovely to see her. So.
I'm going to run through the things that are bringing me joy at the moment. I'm going to start with Sutej Singh, who has a new single out, which is called Kadambari, and features Nadini Srikar on vocals. It's an epic guitar track. Singh is this incredible virtuoso guitarist, but he's not someone who just like plays a million notes per second. He knows when to leave space, and his solos, like those of my favorite guitarists like David Gilmour, Mark Knopfler, they have their own narrative. They've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And here's a lesson for you writers out there. Suchej always wears a long coat and a turban. Add the guitar, and when he's in silhouette, you always know it's him. So have a think about how your characters might look in silhouette, how they can be more iconic. If you think of characters like Batman, Darth Vader, Sherlock Holmes, once you see their silhouette, you always know who they are. Other things that bring me joy, Mythic Quest on Apple TV.
Everything's Dana, Dana, Dana.
Brady Bunch reference?
Yes.
We talked about workplace shows earlier with Star Trek. This is a workplace comedy. It's about the makers of an online role-playing game called Mythic Quest. You don't need to know anything about gaming. It's warm-hearted, very, very funny. You got Rob McElhenney in the cast. He's co-creator. But I think the show's secret weapon is Megan Gans. She's a co-creator, but she's also written for Community, Modern Family, Last Man on Earth, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She's a brilliant, brilliant writer. And there's a recent episode where they did a murder mystery retreat. It was just perfect. In terms of books, I'm loving Barry Sonnenfeld's book, Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, True Stories from a Career in Hollywood. Barry has directed many of my favourite films, the first two Addams Family movies, Men in Black, Get Shorty. He did the TV version of A Series of Unfortunate Events. He was also cinematographer working with the Coen brothers on films like Blood Simple, Miller's Crossing. He also did When Harry Met Sally. He talks about how they did that multiple phone shot in When Harry Met Sally, took 67 takes. He's now at the stage in the career where he talks very, very frankly about some of the people he's worked with. And I first heard him about this book when he was interviewed on the Film Stories podcast, and that's what this is, a brilliant collection of film stories. And finally, I had the great privilege of reading an advanced copy of Flint in the Bones, which is a new novel by Eva St. John. Flint in the Bones is it's a brilliant blend of crime and history, the past, the present. It's all brilliant thrills. There's a loyal dog. Now, if you've read Eva St. John's Quantum Curator series, you're going to be familiar. She has these page-turning stories that blend history. If you haven't, you're in for such a treat. Now, she's launching a Kickstarter soon, and you can sort of you can sign up for it, so you can find out when it's going to launch. It's launching very, very soon. I'm going to put a link in the comments here so you can have a look at it. I'm definitely going to do it. One of the things he's offering as well is to have a character named after you, and I did that with The End of Magic, and it was really, really popular. So do check that out. And before we wrap up, I'm going to do a quick mention of the Green Room. Twice a month, I run live sessions on Zoom where you can ask me questions about the craft of writing, your work in progress, all that kind of stuff. The sessions are fun and informal and all very chatty. I thought they'd all last for about half an hour. They all run for an hour now. You can send me questions in advance. They're recorded live and saved on Ko-fi for exclusive access to Green Room supporters. And this Thursday coming, the 27th, we've got another one of our 200-word workshops where the members send me 200 words of their work in progress. I give it a critique. Promises to be lots of fun. We do one of those each month and a standard Q&A every month as well. I'm going to pop a link to the Green Room page on Ko-fi in the comments below, so you can check that out. And I'll put it in the show notes if you're listening back to the podcast as well. And it's just £20 a month, and there's no long-term commitment. You can pop in and out as you want. And the next session is going to be, like I say, on February 27th. Then we're going to have two more in March as well. And you can pre-order The Corn Bride. My new book is out in a couple of weeks, basically 13th of March. So yeah, do check that out. It's available from all good retailers. But if you want a signed paperback, then pop over to the Woodville Village bookshop. My author samples arrived this weekend, and I'm so excited. Here it is. And I've got books, and you can buy them, all sorts of books. But rather than we're talking about celebrating launch days, I'm not doing like a big launch for this or anything. I'm basically doing a never-ending tour of Comic-Cons. So I'm going to every Comic-Con I can go to in the south of England to sign copies and sell them. So Saturday, 8th of March, I'm going to be at the Crawley Comic-Con. Sunday, 9th of March, I'm going to be at the Peterborough Comic-Con. Saturday, 22nd of March, I'm going to be at the Milton Keynes Mega Comic-Con. And on the 23rd of March, I'm going to be at the Bournemouth Comic-Con. So I hope to see you there. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of Creative Differences. You're going to find all the links we've discussed in the show notes for the episode and pop along to the episode's webpage at marksdaycreativedifferences.com. A huge thanks to Emily for production assistance, to Kai Newton for the edit, and to Dominic Currie for our, and again, air quotes here, jingle. Gareth, thanks so much for joining us today. As always, you've been magnificent, and thank you for being so generous with your answers as well. What's coming up next for you? What's you mentioned the short story collection. What's coming up after Future's Edge? Is what can we get excited about?
Well, I've already written another standalone space opera called Jitterbug, which is coming out from Titan in February 2026, so that one's already in the bag. I've written a thriller, which is with my agent at the moment, and I have a secret book that I've been writing, that I wrote at the end of last year, that's coming out in, I think, July, and should be announced this month. But I've had to sign NDAs up the wazoo, so I can't say anything more about that, except keep an eye out for that sometime this month.
Very, very exciting. Wonderful. Oh, before we go, next month's special guest is the wonderful Nadine Matheson. It's going to be on Thursday, 27th of March, 8 p.m. GMT. Nadine lives in London. She's a criminal solicitor. In 2016, she won the City University crime writing competition, and her debut crime novel, The Jigsaw Man, was won by HQ in a 6-publisher auction, and it's been translated into 15 languages, option for television as well. Nadine is also the presenter of the Conversation podcast, which for my money is the best British podcast for author interviews. Nadine is an absolutely brilliant writer, really insightful on the craft and business of writing. She's absolutely brilliant. You are not going to want to miss this one. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, things like ratings, reviews, likes, shares, these all help massively with those mysterious algorithms. So until next time, happy writing, reading, and being different. We have to wave goodbye now. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.